And what we're going to do now is going to pick up a lot of that in the conversation now with Debbie James on my left and Paulette Osborne on my right. We're also joined by Tania, Yasmin and by Simon Harris, who does deserve a special mention, not because of his work for the Special Schools Outreach Service, but because he ran the London Marathon yesterday, which just brings in the sporting element that we started with. So I thought we were going to have paramedics at this stage, but he is actually fully functioning and in work at Wilson Stewart. So well done, Simon. You can come to that later.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get up from my chair after an hour and a half sitting down watching this though, Tim, but we'll see how we go.
Brilliant. So just to remind participants, we have had a huge number of people sign up who aren't all here, and we are taking this set of messages out on a bit of a roadshow to all the consortia and networks. But what is useful about you being in the room now is that you can use the question and answer facility. So I want to just kind of trail that by saying we had some really sharp questions to John Blake. And they were the questions that I know many of you would want to answer. So Mangal asked about what really hard levers government are now going to use to force academisation. And then we had a question from the head of a single academy trust, really wanting to know, in the scale of things, how coercive are the department going to be forcing people into multi-academy trusts. And the cheeky Nigel Atwood of Northfield threw in a very strong anti-academy question, and we've given those all to John, and John has graciously answered them quite fully. So what we'll do is we'll put those all in text form for you to read. They're good answers, they're interesting answers, and yeah, as I say, credit to John for the gracious way in which he's answered those. But I'm conscious of time, and we're going to move on. So those things will appear with this presentation, with the roadshow, and we'll put them in a blog on Thursday. So what we wanted to do in this period was say, so you've heard something about the direction of travel nationally and the direction of things in Birmingham. Kevin and I have had a really good conversation about Sue Harrison's priorities. She's going to be with us next month, and Kevin's going to stay on for a little while to support Sue as she gets started in the hot seat. But we are delighted that BEP is secure and in place for the next 7 years now, really holding a big responsibility for school improvement in the city. And so the contract proposition going forward is quite different from what's gone before. Debbie James, you were involved in developing a new strategy. You were originally on the BEP board, and then when Tracy moved on, you took on the strategic role of leading our thinking on school improvement. And for those of you who don't know Debbie, until Easter she was a head teacher in the city, and prior to that she was a senior HMI. So Debbie, with all the work that you've put into the new strategy, what is different? What are the big things that heads across the city need to know are going to be different with the new BEP contract?
Thanks, Tim. And in many ways, that was part of our big purpose today, was to give us a chance to share with you what might be different. I think I'm going to just sneak in at the beginning that actually there are some things that aren't different. The starting point of not being different is there is no more money for this contract. So it's not like BEP can suddenly do a million things that it never used to do before. But we do want to rethink how we spend that money. And so there are some things we still have to do. You know, the schools that really need additional support, that have had a bad Ofsted outcome, that have some really poor outcomes for their students, we are still going to need to be putting in some very intensive support to those most vulnerable schools. It's going to be slightly different support, but it will still be there, and it will still be there that people come to in that situation. And we will still look out to some of you to help us provide that support. So that's going to continue happening. But I think one of the things we're going to try and do is just be slightly more systemic about how we look at all that additional external support and how we bring it into a place and back out to schools that need it. And that's going to be under something called the Birmingham Institute for Professional Learning, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Because the thing I really want to talk about, and it fits quite well actually, just following on from Debbie Holmes there, is that, you know, we have to think of a way to try and help a city the size of Birmingham with more than 300 schools get better. And I'm not saying we have to get better because we're bad. I'm saying we've got to get better because we all believe that each of us could do a little bit more for kids in our school. And for every child we do something better for, we know we are doing something about their future, their prospects, what will happen to them. So I think we've always had as a city a really strong moral imperative, that sense of belonging to Birmingham and wanting the best outcomes for Birmingham. But I think what we haven't really got our heads around is how you make that happen in a system that's so huge. And, you know, we've heard lots today about system leadership and thinking about systems and structures. And BEP, when it first started, tried a model of system leadership that involved creating new structures and new systems and new groups for us to work in. But we all struggled with it. And we struggled with it because we're heads who know how we like to do things and who we like to partner with. And so this contract is really focused around your consortia and your networks. And we are really trying to find a way to drive improvements in your consortia or your network without huge cost, without huge impact, without anybody coming in and telling anybody what to do. So, you know, if we start with that common goal, we all want better outcomes for our young people, then we need to look at how we can start doing that. So we have used some of our school improvement money this year to fund a team of people we're going to call consortium partners. They're currently being recruited. We have some folks stepping in at the moment to do it on an interim basis, but it'll be January when that kicks off. And what is a consortia partner going to do, you're going to ask? And I have to say, there's a bit of me because my hand's up now, says I'm not quite sure, but we are going to work with you about what they do. What we know is they will add capacity to the system and to your consortia. I hope you'll be happy for them to come to consortia meetings. I hope you'll give them some time to talk and work with you about the sort of projects that might be useful as you try to think about what do I need to do to get better. You know, Debbie's talked about the DLP projects that come with vast amounts of money. Don't look to BEP for that. We haven't got vast amounts of money. What we've got are good links to all the things that might help us. So the sorts of things we might be looking at in your consortium, for example, is that some of you, 3 or 4 schools within your consortium, might think, oh, my year 3 and 4 history is really poor. We haven't got a good scheme. We need to do something about it. And what I hope your consortium partner will do will help you find ways of working through that. Some peer reviews, some person you call, some link. So we just drive those small incremental bits of improvement through our system. So that, I guess, in a, not in a nutshell, in a kind of small picture is what we are trying to do. We don't know how it'll work yet. It'll work if you're willing to share with us, if you're willing to participate with us, and if you believe in the same outcome that we're all of us do. So I think, Tim, that is where I'll leave that one.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder, if that is triggering thoughts and questions in your mind, then use the Q&A facility and we'll try and make this a more 3-way conversation. But for now, Paulette, as I say, you've been with BEP for a little while, and actually I don't know how much people know, but you were the genius behind a lot of the work we did around curriculum and the subject focus that came with the new Oscar framework. Tell us what isn't so new, but is important and that we're building on for the new work going forward.
Yes, well, there's certainly been a renewed vigour in terms of the expectations of the curriculum. We know schools need to have clear maps that show a logical sequence in terms of lessons, that they can really show are progressive for the children, to really show they're making progress in lessons. So we know we started our curriculum strategy at just before the start of the pandemic, pretty much. And we had a good turnout in terms of the training that we delivered in 2019, 2020. But we know schools are back on it, so we know that actually there have been some staffing changes along the way. So we're having conversations with the subject associations, and the plan is that we're going to bring the training back that we've already delivered, revise and revisit that, and bring it back to schools so that those of you who missed out on the first round can kind of catch up with that. The networks will continue. The 20th of October, we have network session 5, looking at cultural capital. So schools haven't already booked onto that. Certainly check out the BEP website and make sure you're up to scratch, certainly with art. One of the key things we're trying to do as part of our new model is to work with a wider range of subject offers. So we're asking the HMIs who crafted the subject reviews for Ofsted to come into Birmingham and actually talk through with subject leads. Just the essence of those reviews. They're quite long, they're thorough, and it would be good to have the people that have written them just really unpick them for subject leaders and for teachers as well. We're working on deep dive training, and again, this is something we hope we can roll out through the consortia. So there's a small team of us, and just really unpicking the process of the deep dive, and we want to make sure we're sharing that with schools, so you've got a clear grasp from head teacher level all the way through to pupil and potentially parent level as well. So look out for that coming. We know early years is a real focus for the city, lots of changes, reception baseline. We know we're working through new frameworks, development matters is fairly new, a lot going on for the early years. So one of the things we really want to try and move forward is oracy. So communication language, vital for children who've been at home for the last 2 years, very patchy and sketchy education. We want to really make sure we try and move that forward. So we're currently working with the EEF, St Matthew's Research School is part of this, but we're actually trying to persuade RSC Cambridge to come on board with this. These are the national leaders in terms of RSC. Birmingham Early Years Network are keen to be part of this. So this joined up thinking and really moving forward a vital area just to support early years in particular, just so that children are getting that vital start. And of course, we know we've got the English hub, we've got different hubs across the city. I know Billsley Research School is also trying to really move forward, lots around the early years and providing CPD. So certainly we want to really join up the work of our subject strategy. So we're working with the Maths Hub, the Computing Hub, as well as the teaching school hubs as well. So there's lots potentially, Tim, going on.
And what you've done there, Paulette, is brilliantly answer half of the next question, which was a question for me. So I'm going to take that on and say that the 3 big strands to our new contract working are a much tighter, more formed approach to schools that need additional support called Keys to Success. They're this whole thrust of working through consortia and networks. And then they are what Paulette was just beginning to talk about there, the really systematic way in which we join together the 2 research schools, the 4 curriculum hubs, and now the 2 new teaching school hubs. And John talked about the importance of that not quite cradle to grave picture of continuing professional development and professional support for growing a fantastic workforce. And you know that government have had different shots at that, started different things at different times. But we are working in a time now where BEP sees a real role of supporting those different hubs, teaching schools, research schools, and others to create a coherent whole that all of you can readily understand and access, and that we together can harness and influence to make sure they reach the places that most need to be reached. So that's this new thing called the Birmingham Institute for Professional Learning. So I'm not so into marathon running, I like cricket, so the IPL seemed like a good name, the Institute for Professional Learning in this case, but so it doesn't get confused with Indian Premier League cricket, you've got Birmingham in the front. So the Birmingham Institute for Professional Learning is the coming together of those groups that Paulette was just talking about, and BCU, and Services for Education, and others, particularly in the MAT and HE world, where there are systematic offers that we think can make a real difference to school improvement. And the consortium partners will be feeding those out into consortia. The work we do with schools that need it the most will be making sure that some of that stuff gets to them. So it's a joining up and a facilitative role that dovetails with the work that Paulette's been leading around curriculums and subjects. So, huge thank you to the people who are using the question and answer function. And they are particularly coming in as questions about incomplete and problematic challenges around consortia, people who aren't in consortia or don't attend anymore or don't get on or whatever. So Tania Yasmin, for those of you who don't know Tania Yasmin is an executive head over a couple of schools in Spark Hill, that part of the city. But Tania, fantastically for us, has also been a faithful contributor to the SLIC and the System Leadership and Innovation Committee. The SLIC is your head teacher body with a representative from every bit of the city, primary, secondary, special and early years. And BEP uses them as the crucible for quite a lot of our thinking. So Tania, as a serving head teacher, as somebody who attends consortium meetings, just tell us a little bit about your view of this slightly bold attempt for us to reintroduce a kind of a school improvement function in conversation with us at the centre here through consortia, and tell us how that's been worked out in the SLIC conversations and in your mind.
Okay, hello everybody. So as a head teacher and being part of SLIC, it's been a real privilege to be part of the shaping and the thinking of this. And what's been great about it is that across the SLIC board, you've got a range of representatives that we've been able to thrash some of these things out. And the thing to recognise is that at BEP, we, they, all of us together, we're not saying that it's all going to be great or it's going to be fantastic. We recognise the issues. So the issues around some of the things that you're probably saying in the group now about consortia working, that actually not everybody is in part of that, that not everybody attends all the meetings, and that each consortia is different. They're made up of MATs, they're made up of people that are in kind of cooperatives, or they're made up of people that are in single academies or maintain schools, and everybody comes into their consortium with their own identity and with their own priorities. So that is definitely a recognition in that. And I think the thing about consortia as a whole is that it was there long before BEP, and BEP does not own consortia. It doesn't own us. It doesn't own the heads. This is ours, and it's that. And it's the minute that we recognise that it is ours and that we can shape it, and that we can be part of a school self-improving system, that's when we can make it work. So we're aware of those issues, and we are working behind the scenes. And I know that BEP met with CEOs in September to look at how MATs can work together in those situations. But it's about the biggest issue is that consortia and consortiums within that are not set up as school improvement partners, and it's how we change that shift. And how, when Debbie Home was talking about the DLP project, actually there was just a huge range of people, and for that many heads came together. And that's the strength within consortium, is that there is so much strength in heads coming together, in school leaders coming together, and each bringing their own strength and being able to support and challenge each other. And that's what we will, as heads, will be able to do. So the DLP is a classic, it was a great example when we come together for a definite purpose and a defined outcome, that it can work. And there's been many, many positive outcomes from that. So it's not perfect, but I think it's coming into it, knowing that we've got some control over this, that we can be part of a self-improving system, and that we have a lot to bring by working together. I think that's going to be the success of this.
Thank you very, very much, Tania. Debbie, do you want to add anything to that? That's such an important area.
Yeah, I'll just come back a little bit actually, Tania, because we'd also just had a question in the chat saying, what about the heads who don't engage with this? And I think that's a really crucial question, because none of us can make anyone engage with this. You know, that is not the point in principle. This is about it being so valuable to be part of a consortia that you want to be there. And I hope what we can bring to that is just that extra bit of capacity, that support for a chair, you know, that person who can go off and make a phone call to a school or a visit to find out why people don't want to engage. What is it that means it's pointless going to consortia meetings? And can we help that or not? And at the end of it, we're not going to have 16 consortia that all match, that all behave in the same way, that all look the same. But I do hope that we'll continue to see that edging forward that we've seen actually very much through the DLP process. But you're also right, Tania, to point out that this was, you know, consortia being part of our Birmingham history for a long, long time. And you know, we haven't talked much about secondary networks, and we're going to work with those slightly differently. But again, it's that same notion of groups of schools who really have seen the value of working together. So yeah, they'll all be different, and no one's coming to tell anyone what to do. And I hope I worded quite carefully my bit, where I said I hope that chairs of consortia will welcome us, will allow us to attend, will welcome our participation, but actually we haven't got any powers to come and say, we must be in here and we're going to do this, this and this. But I hope we have some nice offers to make that make it attractive, that we'll be part of it.
And just to say that, you know, the reality of the DLP means that we are now in a working habit, and we're talking with Pauline and Debbie in BCC, saying how much we can really work with BCC and support their teams to have better bridgeheads with consortia working, and what BEP will be doing is helping to just keep an eye on and support the DLP as it runs through. Very much a BCC project, but we're keen that we go on trying to join things up, and that it'll be in that culture that we now grow and go on to expand what we can do for school improvement.
And Tim, just while you were talking there, Nigel Atwood has popped his head up again, but just to say the importance of how we help and support schools that don't feel part of networks or groups or consortia. How can we help find homes for everybody? Because again, you know, it doesn't all come from a neat map. We know that, and so much of it is about relationships and how people get on. But we should have a home for everybody, and we should be able to help everybody find a home through this process. So,
and just a nuts and boltsy one. Some people say we don't even know what consortium we're in, and we have actually got a register. It's there in the DLP handbook, and we created it very deliberately for DLP, drawing on ancient history in some cases. Largely, it's geographical. And the other logic to that is that early help and family support happens in local geographies. And so the geographical bit of consortia as they are is something that we all stick with, but only viewing it as a register to make sure that every school knows where to start. We are carrying on those conversations with the diocese, with MAP leaders, so that we can try and understand the complex picture and work into the complex picture that exists.
And we did get a comment there from Paul, afternoon Paul, who's out at Broomfield House, out in, you know, Knoll. Yeah, so that might be what we've got to think about some more. So, you know, there are always going to be questions and issues, but we will help find solutions.
And so, yeah, that's just an advert for knowing the Birmingham Education Partnership phone number. Pick up the phone, send us an email, and we'll begin to do some problem solving on that sort of front. So, I am going to just switch the camera a little bit to our marathon hero, Mr. Harris.
Still awake.
And still not showing great pain, which is great. So, Simon, as Debbie said, you've been involved, instrumental, one of the brains behind the special schools outreach programme. Just, you know, as a serving special head, tell us a little bit about how you see it is going to work on the ground. Okay, hi. Well, thank you for having me. I think the key thing is that the special school outreach offer, or SOS as it's going to be affectionately known, it's all about reaching out a helping hand. It's reaching out a helping hand to schools and young people in the city with special educational needs who need that a little bit of extra support, and perhaps there's not always been the mechanisms previously to do that. And we started working in February on trying to plan out before the Ofsted visit in Birmingham, planning out what this might look like. And you're very kind to say that I was the brains behind this, but there's a group of people who work very close. I know Jane Edgerton, who's on the call, and Debbie and Sandra Paddock, and also various other people involved in the processes that pulled together an idea. And the idea is very simple. We know that Birmingham has got some really well publicised SEND issues. We can't get away from that. But the whole idea of this now, and I know it's what BEP are very keen to promote, this is about sort of, I suppose I'll call it Team Birmingham, and I'm not being too dramatic there. It's the fact that we're all in this together, and there's an opportunity here for a really good news story around SEND and also school-to-school support moving forward, because I think special schools in the city traditionally have been quite a tight group, but been quite insular at times, and there's an opportunity here to share the expertise. We've got a lot of really outstanding special schools in Birmingham, but I think there's a group of like-minded heads now in the special schools who've brought into this SOS process and are ready to share their staff knowledge and share that expertise. And on that note, there's no real set menu about what SOS is going to offer. We're not going to say we will only do this. And initially, it is funded by the DLP funding, but whether a child's got an EHCP or not, and the long-term aim is for this to be a school-led, sustainable, school-to-school support mechanism moving forward. So I think the key thing is that also this is to support the existing services in Birmingham. It's not replacing them, and it's got to work in unison and increase capacity in the city to support young people with special education needs and disabilities. A lot of the inclusion teams who do amazing work in the city get often tied up in a lot of the statutory work that has to happen in the city. So this is an additional capacity support mechanism. And for mainstream schools, this is going to fit tightly into your termly planning meeting processes. So when you meet with specialist teams, we'll look at that's where a potential SOS referral will happen. When you've looked at what the specialist teams and inclusion teams can do, if there's then additional need and they potentially haven't got the capacity to support that, that's where the SOS referral will come in. And also this service will support special school to special school support as well, and special schools will come directly through that. So how it will work, Tim, is very simple. We've got a portal that's at the final stages of testing as we speak. And what's going to happen is that we're going to be doing some training with the provider special schools next week. And we're going to look at what potentially, how quickly we can get support out to schools. We don't want this to be a long bureaucratic process. We want it to be really quick and swift. And if a school needs help, we can get that support in with the providing special school very quickly. And so in a nutshell, that's it. There'll be a one-stop shop portal, which we will, the second it goes live, we will blitz out to everyone so they can see, and that will explain the referral process. But as I said, that isn't a massively long-winded and bureaucratic process. We want it to be swift. And we're really excited about it. I really think we've got an opportunity here. There's a huge amount of untapped potential and untapped knowledge in this city, in our special schools, that we can be sharing much more widely and much more readily. And this SOS is hopefully going to be the mechanism to do that. So Simon, I, in my own headship experience, had the good fortune of being co-located in a special school, and it meant that we could go and knock on the door next door and get their help. And it meant that we ended up succeeding with pupils who were far more complex in their needs than we would have had the confidence to take on ourselves. Sometimes because we could use their multisensory room, or because they had people who were really there. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about schools with an individual child level need coming and getting a particular bit of expertise from a special school. Absolutely, it's knocking on the door with slightly longer arms and an electronic portal to do it. Yeah, so you're basically saying that we're in a position that if you need some help
if there's not the systems in place to help you with that time, no matter how big, how small the issue is. And some of these projects might be a 2-week intervention that supports, and it's all done with. Some of them might run on 12 weeks or longer. We're not going to set any prescription on what the support is or how long it takes. Ultimately, it's just got to make a better situation for that young person in that school setting, and to support the professionals who are working with that child to make sure they get the best education possible. That's what we're all in it for. That's what we want from this. So
we love the model. You know, it's absolutely the essence of BEP, that it is drawing on what's great in our system. And so, you know, this potentially is a cultural kind of change, which means, would I be right, more schools could become more confident at going and basically purchasing some help from the school next door. That could be a special school. So in time, you know, if a mainstream school knows what it wants and has got good at knowing how to ask it, it could potentially go and knock on a special school door that it could buy the help it needs. At the moment, you're talking about a funded central service, but is that right, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's such a diverse range of special educational needs in the city now that it might not be the school that's the special school that's immediately on your doorstep. So we've got to create a mechanism where schools can get access to the right people. So the idea being is when your referral comes in, it will go into a triage service, which is going to initially be staffed by myself. There'll always be a special school head teacher representation on that, and also Sandra Paddock, who's going to be the local authority representative, who's worked in PDSS and a whole range of really successful inclusive services in the city before. So the idea being is you'll be able to put into the triage service that this is the referral, and then we will be matching up the best special school provider to give you the support to reach the outcomes that you want to reach. So we will be buddying people up. And as you said, Tim, initially that is funded through the DLP, but the idea being is we'll always let people know we have got a menu. We said we haven't got a menu of service, but we've got a menu of cost. So we will actually tell schools, if you would have been paying for what you've received, this is what it would have cost. So as we move forward, if people want to know that it's value for money, we can say, well, okay, if this would have cost £500, do you think that would have been value for money? And in the future, it might be that schools would look to their budgets and free up that £500, as long as we've got that quality mechanism to provide high quality support to the schools. And as we move beyond the pilot phase, that's what we want to move to, a school to school sustainable model that we can run in the city and maybe beyond in the future.
Brilliant. And I heard you say, I think also that there's the potential of special school to help special schools. You've got different specialisms and strengths within the special school sector. I mean, if that grew into real school to school support internally within the special school sector, do you think that the heads would be up for that?
I think ultimately we're in a world where dealing with young people with complex special education needs and disabilities is a difficult job. It's really difficult sometimes to work out what the best solutions are. So if we take, I mean, we're talking thousands of staff across the special schools in the city with a whole range of different expertise. And if we can make sure that we can share that knowledge around, we're going to see our special school sector improve, because we're going to see higher quality in our special schools. Those special schools are going to be supporting our mainstream schools. I'm going to see how inclusive we are. And we all know there's some schools who do inclusion, mainstream schools do inclusion incredibly well. And there's some others who need a bit more help. And that's what SOS will be there to do, is to try and raise our game as a city in terms of our inclusive practice and making sure we meet those individual needs. And that's the key to all of this, meeting those individual needs, which is why the referrals will be on an individual process, because we want to make sure we meet those individual needs of each child.
Brilliant, thank you. Simon, we are really excited about it, and thank you for the work you've been doing in that area. And as I say, it feels to us like the very spirit of BEP, and great that schools can move in that continuum of going and getting specific pupil level help, right up to what we're hoping to do more and more, which is build school-to-school capacity and the collective working of bigger groups, as within, you know, potentially the special forum, or as within a consortium or a secondary network. So we've got a lot of useful questions and prompts coming in on our screen. Certainly just the request that we republish and make really public the lists of membership for consortia and networks. We'll do that. Just to say, there's a complicated history. There are groups that trade. There are people who've chosen to go across boundaries, and we're not looking to redefine any of that. We're just simply saying this is what we're considering to be the base geography for consortia and networks. And so in our view, that's talking about consortia, meaning primary schools, networks, meaning secondary schools, with special heads in their fora and their special heads association. But we know that in a whole load of cases, special schools have also found it useful to join and hook into a local consortia or network according to their phase. And that's fine too. We're not prescriptive on that. What we're saying is that from our contract point of view, we want to know that we're doing business with everybody at some point in the system, which is why that generally will be a primary forum, secondary forum, special forum, and we will be wanting to talk to consortia and networks as the way of talking to every primary school and every secondary school. If we know that there are schools missing, then we will go and try and draw them in. But you know, we are not funded to do that. We haven't got a huge capacity to knock on doors that are closed where people don't really want to engage. And so what happens locally in building that invitational culture, whether it's through the particular starting point of DLP or the needs of a child with high levels of additional need, or whether it's in an invitation to take on a small history project or reading project with a group of other schools that are a subset of your consortium, we need to do that all together to build that sense of Team Birmingham as a place where there's trust, as a place where people want to come and be part of collective solution making. And if I were to go back to some of the answers that John Blake has given to questions, they are all very deliberately framed in the challenge of the dark ages whilst we haven't got any data, and in terms of our real ambition going forward, ultimately into economies of sensible ways of managing schools so they don't fall over and fail. We need to be moving towards ever stronger and stronger networks. And the more our networks are strong, the less vulnerable we are to the falling over scenario, which currently is, for a maintained school, the most certain way of moving quickly into forced academisation. So I think we are nearing time. So it was Pauline Madison who said how wonderful it was to work for David Woods, and how brilliant it was to have the privilege of doing that with Estelle Morris as Secretary of State for Education. Well, it's been my privilege to have David Woods as part of the BEP team for the last 5 years, and for my boss to be Estelle Morris. So how lucky am I? Before I hand over to Estelle for closing words, and we can remember the days when we had a Secretary of State that we were all really excited about, I wanted to just do a little advert for tomorrow. Tomorrow is a full day, and whilst we had well over 250 people sign up for the day, and we'll get the good stuff out to them, we know that the busyness of school life takes over, and we know that that's likely tomorrow, but there is real value in making sure that you hear the stuff, you hear it live, you get the chance to ask the questions. So please do take a look at tomorrow's programme. Needless to say, we will expect to be overwhelmed by attendance at the Ofsted briefing at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon with Peter Humphreys, but there's a lot of other really good stuff during tomorrow. So have a look at the programme, and it's all free. Get signed up, and please, if you're a head teacher, have a little look and see what would be useful for folk in your team.